Good evening, fine folks at Film Fanatic. So this is Jason Dean coming live, actually again for another impromptu video here, where it's, again, I like to change things, try to change things up and bring some variety to the channel and what have you. I've been trying to keep to a regular schedule with videos and things like that. It's been a little bit hard as far as doing videos every morning like I was, because I've been trying to I've had other things going on in the morning, so it's been a little bit tougher for as far as there's been a little bit more of a time crunch, if you will. But I'm still uploading videos as much as I can. Love doing this channel. I got a real special show coming up, which will be a real. I'm really looking forward to it. It's gonna be, I think it's gonna be film. We're gonna shoot it on Sunday afternoon, maybe in the late afternoon to the morning, or probably in the late afternoon or Sunday night. But very much looking forward to that. And it's going to be a special show with a really special guest, Dr. Heather Beers. She's a really wonderful woman, and she is one of the best music educators in the Mid-Coast area. She's also done lots of work on films, music that is used in certain films, and all of those things that entails. And we just recently watched the new Barbie movie together. I had never seen it before. It was my first time seeing it. She had seen it a couple times. So she is a really insightful, brilliant person. So I'm really excited. We talked about doing an interview together. I love doing interview segments. It's kind of my favorite thing to do. So we're going to do a show where we'll talk a little bit about her background, of course, and who she is and what she's been doing, as of late, and also, but the main focus of the show will be, we will be talking about Barbie, which I was really, really pleasantly surprised. I was surprised on how much I like that movie. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be a really cool special show with a very special guest, and we'll be filming that probably this Sunday, and then I'll be uploading it sometime next week, so that will be really cool. So today's show is on Oppenheimer, and there was that whole phenomenon with both of those films being released at the same time, the same weekend, and they both basically set the the movie box office on fire. They're almost regarded as the two most important films that kind of, more or less saved movie theaters, as far as, where, that's still a viable thing. People will actually go see movies. And so I did not see Barbie in the theater, but I did see Oppenheimer. And we actually watched, Heather Beers and I actually watched both movies together back to back. And so it was a pretty fun, exhilarating day of movies. So I had seen Oppenheimer again. It was my second time seeing it. I saw it in the theater. She did not see Oppenheimer, and then we watched Barbie afterwards, and she had seen Barbie twice, and I had never seen Barbie. So it was a kind of a cool flip-flop of those kinds of things. And we had really interesting we had some really interesting conversations about both movies afterwards. But I wanted to do a show today and tonight on just Oppenheimer. I did do a review on this movie after I saw it in the theater. So that is on the channel. And again, I wanted to talk about this movie because, a bunch of different reasons. It did win every Academy Award this past year. It won Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor. It won Best Director. It basically, if there was an award available this year, Oppenheimer won that award. And so I watched it again under a slightly different kind of mindset. And do I think that Oppenheimer really deserved to win all of the awards? I don't really think so. And I it's a tough thing because I do really appreciate and I do really love some of Christopher Nolan's work quite a bit. The thing that is the thing that I found that was hard about Oppenheimer was I felt the length this time. I felt like this film was, although again it's a fine line, but it's one of those things where on one hand I think artistically I think the direction, the acting, the cinematography, all of those things that take to make a film really good were there. I think the movie is a really good film. I think it's really well put together, really well fleshed out, really well conceived. But do I always think that because from a technical standpoint, that the film does that actually make the film an enjoyable experience? And I feel like in this case, the first time I saw it in the theater, I thought it was really good. And I don't know, my opinions of the film have kind of changed a little bit since then. But then after I watched it the second time, I noticed it changed quite a bit. And it's mostly around the length of the film. I felt like the film was a little too long. I felt we actually needed to take a break while we were watching the movie and kind of like get a cup of coffee or something, make some food, just something to kind of take us out of that state of watching the film. And I thought it's a very well done movie. And again, I consider myself to be a very big Christopher Nolan fan. You have films like Interstellar, Inception, the Batman movies, in particular the first two, The Dark Knight and Begins. Quite a few movies he has directed over the years that are really great. But I think there are some things around kind of the heaviness of the story. Of course, this film is more or less a biopic of Robert Oppenheimer, who was the creator of the atomic bomb, and how it's an examination more or less of how, on one hand he was kind of regarded as an American hero, and on the other hand he could be regarded as an example of American imperialism and the ugly nature and the monstrous things that American imperialism can do. So he could be looked at in history through a lens of being a hero and a savior, if you will, but an American icon, an American scientist who is the greatest in his field, but then also a person who is responsible for thousands of deaths and ushering in this new horrible age where we continue to live in, as far as introducing the idea of the arms race, and with the notion of the end of life as we know it through basically the push of a button. So, and Robert Oppenheimer himself was a very complex person. He did a lot of questionable things, to say the least. And so, and again, he's looked at and also admired for his prowess and his achievements in physics. And so obviously that makes for a very interesting kind of an examination. If you're going to do a story about somebody who is complex and who is incredibly controversial, like truly controversial, this kind of would be that kind of figure in American history. Um, but as a film, I feel like the film is, again, it's essentially this film is a bunch of men in a room talking, and it's interesting too because this film came out during, say, the summer season. It came out the summer of 2023. And typically when films come out in the summertime, they are, more or less they're typical. It's typically the time when big Hollywood studios will put out their big, blockbuster films, like the comic book movies, big action movies, movies that have a lot of explosions, movies that have huge budgets, movies that have a mass appeal, a real, kind of high commercial level to them to make money. And so it's interesting that a movie that is incredibly intellectual was released during that, period, of that year or that season, and it went on to make as much money as it did. And it was easily the biggest grossing film that Christopher Nolan has ever directed. It was pretty much the one of the biggest. I believe Barbie actually made more money, but Oppenheimer was a commercial blockbuster. It made so much money in the box office. I remember hearing accounts of where people were going to see Oppenheimer sometimes 4 or 5 times, sometimes, yeah, 4 or 5 times in the theater, which to me is like kind of outlandish and just like insane into itself. And I'll be getting into that, and again, this is just my opinion, and I'm not by any means saying knocking Oppenheimer. I think it's in a lot of ways more on the technical side of things, or on the technical spectrum of things. It's a brilliant film, but as a film, at face value, that you're going to go and enjoy or get something out of it and have an emotional resonance about it, do I feel like it is a great film? And it is a great film, but I feel like this movie is one real tall drink of water. I think it's so steeped in so much science jargon that is used in the telling of the story, on the creation of this atomic weapon that was used to kill hundreds of thousands of people. But it's so steeped in the science aspect of it. Although it is very interesting and fascinating. It's also, I think it's like overly, I don't know, overly dense and overly thick and overly intellectual, to where I kind of feel, to be honest, I kind of feel you have to have, and I think it's a real rare exception. I kind of feel like you have to almost have an interest or a real pretty good comprehensive understanding of physics to kind of enjoy this film. Myself, I don't really know much about physics. I have a very deep interest in science and how things work, and how trying to learn knowledge about understanding our reality, or our the way the world works to a degree. But I'm not really steeped or have had a deep interest in, say, physics itself. And again, I should go into a movie not having to have a deep thirst for a very particular subject to understand it. I should be able to go into it cold, and it could be something I don't know anything about, and I should still, as a viewer and as a fan of films, I would hope the film would kind of transcend that, and I can just enjoy it. Whether it makes for an horrific journey, a scary journey, a rude awakening about reality, or it's a fantastical journey. I should still be pulled in or feel like I'm invested in the movie in that way. And I feel like with this film that doesn't really happen. I just feel like it's really dry, and I think it does drag quite a bit. Um, and it's a very dark, it's a very bleak movie, and I the one interesting thing is it does show, the people that we continually elect in office every year, especially in the federal government. The people that shape our foreign policy, our domestic policy, the people that we continually vote in over and over again. This film, I definitely feel, shows what a lot of these people, especially during this time of war, what a lot of their motivations truly are. And they truly are horrific. I'm a big fan of horror films. Well, I shouldn't say I'm a big fan. I'm a massive fan of horror films, and horror is my favorite genre. But that is, of course, fictional horror. It has an entertainment level to it. That's what it's about. This is true life horror, and so I'm aware of how these things work, on how these policies are enacted, and how these laws are put into place. And I have always been disgusted by it. So I am not a person who, I think, as far as how the machine of politics operates, I think I have a pretty good understanding of how that monster exists, and how it eats, and how it lives, and how it breathes. And that monster is politics. And so this film really does dive into that aspect of it. And again, it's a real, it's a slap in the face, in as far as like of what reality is in our political system. But that being said, I feel this movie, again, it's very dark, it is very bleak, but you do not, it's unrelenting. There's no levity to this movie, and it feels so dense. Everything is coming at you to where you feel like you're being bombarded and almost assaulted by the the story itself, and the denseness of the story. Um, and it's interesting because when I first saw the movie, I liked it. I thought it was very, very good. It was surprisingly engaging, being that it's essentially, a group of men talking in an office, or in various rooms, and there is no other aspect of that, and the subject matter is very dark, and it is very, very serious. But I think that this movie is so much of it has so much of that the movie is, you know it's not something I want to see again. When I saw the movie the first time, I really liked it, but I was like, I don't know if I really want to see that again. And again, I had that feeling even more so after this movie, because there's no levity to it. There's no it's just bludgeoning. I don't know how else to describe it. It's just kind of a bludgeoning experience, and it's so damn serious. And although I think it's pretty factual, and I agree with the portrayal of Oppenheimer and the historical accounts around it, it doesn't. I just don't feel, as a movie experience, it doesn't really transcend to an experience that you necessarily want to have again, or there isn't really an ounce of, I don't know, enjoyment around it because of that. It's a weird um, combination of those things, and it's a film that I feel is it's taxing, and it's extremely, it's extremely dry, like I said before, and it feels like it's kind of an uphill battle to get through this film. And again, I think I attribute that mostly to the length of this film. And it does, I think it does, overall, I'd say now, and I did feel this way before, but it doesn't really contribute to the feeling of, well, I gotta go and buy this on Blu-ray or 4K, or I need to see this again. It was it was just such an exhilarating experience. Just I don't know, it just didn't have that aspect to me. The other interesting thing too about this film is that it when all last summer, and it's been a thing. Obviously, it's been a thing. And as a collector of movies, I've seen the industry get hit pretty hard, but yet it is going strong in a lot of ways, and that is physical media. There's been this talk of one day soon that physical media could just go away and disappear altogether. And luckily that hasn't happened, but I can understand the concerns around that. There have been some developments in that area that are very sad. But the interesting thing is when Oppenheimer came out on Blu-ray and 4K, it set these massive sales. It basically set the whole notion of that physical media is going to go away. It set that idea on fire. It said, no, people want to see physical media, and they want to buy Blu-rays, they want to buy 4Ks. And from what I was reading, this movie was the biggest selling Blu-ray and the biggest selling 4K of all time. Which again is another thing to me that is like kind of blows my mind. Like, of all movies that people would go crazy over buying and wanting to experience over and over again, I don't know. I don't know. It's a weird thing. And again, a movie like this to come out during a Hollywood season of the summertime, where typically you have just, big budget, somewhat brainless action movies, or just fun amusement park ride movies. It is kind of inspiring that a movie that is intellectual makes that it made as much money as it did. So it's an interesting thing that way. But again, it's a thing where I just feel, because of the the subject matter and the way it's told, it's too. I feel like I was kind of assaulted. I kind of feel like, again, I had to take two big significant breaks while I was watching this film, and that usually doesn't happen. And it does feel too long, and it's too dry to really look at it, or to put it in this light as being the best picture of 2023. I don't believe it should have gotten all of those awards that it did. I think of a movie that I really, really love, that essentially the setup is exactly the same. And that would be a movie like, well, a good example for me would be All the President's Men. I think that movie is a primetime example of the way the film is set up and structured. It's kind of the same thing. And of course that movie stars Dustin Hoffman and Robert Redford, and that's about the Watergate scandal. And that movie in itself is really a thing about, it's really centered on a bunch of guys in an office talking for 2 hours. That's what it is. And that's really all it is at face value. But the thing for me that's so significantly different between watching a movie like All the President's Men, which is one of my all-time favorite movies, and watching Oppenheimer, is that Oppenheimer is so dry, and it's very good on a technical standpoint, from a technical standpoint, but it's so dry and it's so dense, and there's no levity, and it just is coming at you at such a rapid rate that it's kind of unrelenting. Whereas I feel like All the President's Men, it's, yeah, of course, it's dealing with a very serious subject, a subject that a whole generation lived through. It was in the news all the time, and for all intents and purposes, it's a dense subject matter um, about politics. But I think the movie plays out and feels like you're watching a murder mystery film. It has this like classic kind of mystery aesthetic to it. And so there's like, to me, there's like a levity to that movie. It, because it has this, the way that film was shot, and it has this ebb and flow, and it has this real entertaining narrative of taking you on this journey through this kind of like this murder mystery tale. It has, because it's done that way, and the narrative is structured that way, and the story is told that way through that kind of lens, it makes for a really entertaining movie. Where it's like, that's a movie I love watching. I've seen that movie so many times, and I watch that movie quite a bit. There's times where I'm craving to watch that movie because it's an exciting movie. It's really entertaining. It's got all of this great kind of like nail biting suspense to it. So it has a high entertainment value. And Oppenheimer, I feel, doesn't have any of those qualities. So I don't know. That's the best way I think that I can put it as far as describing what separates those two kinds of things and using those two examples. So yeah, this is kind of just a updated or new revisit or rewatch of Oppenheimer. Especially, I wanted to talk about after just watching it again, but especially I wanted to talk about it again because it won every award that you can think of. So, thanks again, and love to hear comments about what people think of this film, Oppenheimer, and maybe some of the comparisons on the two films I mentioned, All the President's Men and Oppenheimer, and what I feel, again, it's just my opinion, but what separates those two things and the use of, or what is the entertaining aspect of that film, or what makes that work. And it still has to be entertaining, and what the difference might be between those two things. So, thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.